بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسول الكريم ما بعد. Once again, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, people seem a little bit half awake, but okay, it's fine. We continue the series of lectures on Quran and science, and in this one we're going to talk about Ash-Shamsu wal-Qamaru, the moon, the sun and the moon, as Allah says many times in the Holy Qur'an. He puts them both together many times. And as usual, before we introduce the Quranic verses, let's try and understand a little bit about the sun and the moon. So I think I've summarized about 17 points about the sun, just to give you a sort of idea and feel for what the sun is. The sun and the earth and the moon are all about the same age. The sun's probably a little bit older. It's a little bit, on the cosmic scale, it doesn't really matter. So people have said the sun is 4.6 or 4.57 or whatever, but it's about 4.5 billion years old. And it started from an explosion of another star. So there's another star around, that exploded, and the matter which came from that explosion formed our solar system, including the sun. So that's why the earth, for example, has heavy elements in it, because it's from the explosion of the previous star. I haven't found the name of the previous star, but anyway, because it doesn't exist anymore, to be honest. So the sun is about 4.5 billion years old. It's compared to the earth has got a diameter. If you remember your maths, if you've got a circle, diameter is a line that goes from one end to the other, right, through the center. So if you've got a sphere, it's the same thing. It starts from one end, goes to the other, through the center, that's a diameter. So if I was to travel that way through the center of the earth and come out, I don't know, New Zealand, Australia, that's a diameter. So the earth's diameter is about 12,700 kilometers. And the sun, in comparison, is 1.4 million kilometers. It's absolutely huge. And if you were to put lots of little earths in the sun, you'd need about 1 million. And so the earth is big, the sun is absolutely huge. I've even put the mass of the sun down, just so you can realize what a big number it is. So it's 1.99. And then you've got 28 zeros after that, right? Kilograms. And it's 330,000 times that of the earth. And in terms of its composition, it's mostly hydrogen and a little bit is helium. The 25% that's helium has been produced from the hydrogen. So if you like, it's used up 25% of its fuel. The sun in its life. It's probably over halfway through its life. And what happens is the hydrogen atoms fuse together and they produce helium. Helium is more stable and energy is released. It's a huge amount of energy using the formula E equals mc squared. So the sun's mass is actually reducing because of this energy production, because mass is changing to energy. Not only that, it's losing mass because of solar flares. I don't know if you know, every now and again you get an explosion on the surface of the sun, and these produce charged particles that are like missiles that travel into space. It's called the solar flares. So the sun's losing mass, and because of its loss of mass over time, in about 1 billion years' time, it'll start getting hotter. Well, it's getting hotter, but it'll get really hot, and it'll start getting bigger. And if you're on the earth in about 1 billion years' time, you'll probably start seeing the water evaporate and the mountains starting to melt and all that. It's pretty bad. So it's about 1 billion years time. So the sun's got a finite life. And if you learn A-level physics, they've got a graph where they classify all the stars, all right, and the sun's on the graph, and it's a G2V yellow dwarf star. That's what it's called. For a long time, scientists thought it was just an average star, not very bright, but now they've realized it's actually one of the brightest suns in the galaxy, and it's one of the top 15% of all the stars in terms of the brightness. You sometimes hear, oh, this is hotter than the surface of the sun. You sometimes hear that phrase, right? That's because the surface of the sun is quite hot, but not as hot as the core of the sun. The core of the sun, they've estimated to be 15.7 million degrees centigrade. That is absolutely incredible, right? You can't even imagine that figure. The surface of the sun is only 5,500 degrees centigrade, and you can get that temperature. You know, you can. It's around the Earth in places, and it's around in industry and stuff. But even 5,500 is really hot. So everything's happening at the core of the sun, which you can't see. And when I said that to someone, I said, by the way, the sun's temperature in the core is 15.7 million degrees. He goes, no, it isn't. I said, how can you say it isn't? He goes, it's just a guess, isn't it? Because no one's been there. I said, yeah, it's just a guess. No one's been there. So much for skepticism, right? And every second, it uses 620 million tons of hydrogen. Every second. That's absolutely, these numbers are absolutely massive. So these are the charged particles I mentioned. And believe it or not, these charged particles actually are destructive to life. The moon and Mars, they've received these charged particles continuously. So Mars is a dead planet because of the solar wind, basically. And the reason we're alive on the Earth, because Allah's protected the Earth with a force field. And that force field is called the magnetic field. And the magnetic field, when the charged particles come towards the Earth, they actually deflect up and go down into the poles. So Earth has been protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but Mars hasn't. So Mars is dead. It's got a very, very small magnetic field, nothing to, write home about. And the charged particles also, they travel past Pluto. That's called the sun's influence. They call it the heliosphere. That protects us from radiation from interstellar space, from outside space. So Allah is protecting the solar system by the sun's force field. And Allah is protecting the Earth from the sun's force field by the Earth's force field. So all these people have realized in the last 10, 15 years because of the spacecraft that have been sent out. The sun actually is orbiting the Milky Way. In the center of Milky Way there's a huge black hole, and the whole Milky Way spins around like that really slowly, and the sun's going round as well, around the Milky Way. And the sun's orbit is about 250 million years, how long it takes to go around once. So in its life, it's gone round about 16, 17 times around the Milky Way in its life. Isn't that amazing? And it's taken the Earth with it. What speed is the sun travelling at? Well, it depends where you are, but people have estimated it's travelling round the Milky Way 150 miles per second, but it goes round its axis roughly every 28 days. Now every 11 years, I don't know if you heard of the sun cycle, but every 11 years the magnetic field of the sun reverses. So north becomes south and south becomes north. And every time that happens, there's a huge flurry of activity on the sun. The sun gets very active. When I say active, lots of solar flares, lots of sunspots, and even the weather changes on the earth as a result because of this. Sorry, not the weather. Yeah, the weather a little bit, but even electric grids become affected by this. And people actually monitor the sun and give out warnings. The sunspot activity is very high today, or will be very high this month. Be careful, because it has impacts on radio interference, has impacts on electricity grids. There was a grid actually got shut down because the charged particles from the sun were so powerful. And you can actually see in Scotland sometimes there's lights in the sky because the charged particles are so powerful they actually come down over Scotland, over England. You can actually see that sometimes. So there's a lot happening we're not aware of. And every 11 years you have this effect. And sun spots are actually darker areas of the sun because magnetic fields focus and you have sun flares jumping from one spot to the other. And these flares are absolutely huge. If you had an Earth there, right, they would dwarf the Earth. They would just go like that, over the Earth like that. Absolutely massive sun flares. Now, a couple of things to note, well, apart from these, a couple of other things to note. We can actually predict sunrise and sunset very, very accurately. Just keep that thought in your mind, because we're going to explain that a little bit. And in terms of the sun, it has a starting point and it has a death as well. It has a beginning when it started to shine, and it also has an end point when it's going to die. And the way it's going to die is it's going to get, as the fuel gets used up, it's going to start expanding, and it's going to become something called a red giant. And it'll expand so much it might even reach the Earth's orbit. So if you're on Pluto, the sun you could see it from Pluto easily. It'll be as big as you could see it on the Earth, and probably double, 2 or 3 times that size. And by that time, the mountains will melt. The Earth will just be a burnt rock. It might even get destroyed. That's what's going to happen. There's nothing to stop it. That's Allah's design. And then after that, it'll just collapse, and it'll end up being a little white dwarf, probably the size of the Earth. There'll be a faint light. We believe that Jannah is forever. Hum fiha khalidun, for there you'll live forever. So at that time, we might be having a little bit of a chat and a little bit of a cup of tea, enjoying the Jannah, inshallah. And then someone will say, by the way, that sun we used to be near, oh yeah, it's actually collapsed. Let's have a look. Oh, okay. So go and have a look, and we'll be a little, and that's really interesting. But we don't care about that. We're in Jannah, isn't it? So, and then hopefully you might look back to this lecture thinking, we actually had this lecture, about this. Oh. Okay.
Inshallah.
Thank you, inshallah. Thank you. Person after my heart, oh my dear, thank you very much. Right. Now the sun's given the Earth, it gives it most of its energy. I couldn't find what percentage. I didn't have time to work it out. I wouldn't know how to work it out. But it provides it most of its energy. I would guess it's probably 95% plus, right? And the reason I say 95 or even more, maybe 99%, is because the Earth has its own heat source. It has a very hot core, and it has radioactive elements decaying, which gives it heat as well. So the volcanoes, etc., gives it a lot of geothermal heat. And but most of its energy is provided by the sun. Even the stuff we burn, like oil and coal, that is concentrated historical energy from the sun, because coal is from forests that have died and they have become compressed and etc. And oil is forest. The coal has changed even more to oil. All this is from photosynthesis, so it's stored energy from the sun. So come, please take some lectures, please. So the fossil fuels we're burning, they're actually the stored sun's energy. over I don't know, thousands, millions of years. So you know that the impact the sun has, there'll be no life on the earth if it wasn't for the sun. The earth is warm because of the sun. You know, the sun has played a huge impact on the earth. And we're coming onto the earth in another lecture. I'm going to give the earth its own lecture, but that's a little bit about the sun. And I've got a couple of sort of pictures and diagrams which I've just blatantly stolen from the internet. Right. But I've left the source there, and it tells you a little bit about the sun, the heliosphere in pictures, and about the solar cycle, the sun's magnetism, etc. And there's a whole field of scientists that are actually investigating the sun and the sunspots, and there's satellites dedicated looking at the sun all the time. There are some satellites, you know, dedicated to that. Even to the extent, I believe there was a mission, they was trying to see the sun from one side and then the other side at the same time. They're trying to do that as well. They're so, you know, curious. So those two are for your leisure. And let's now turn to the moon. And by the way, the day Sunday is actually from the word sun. All right? It's not a coincidence. Sunday is meant to be the sun's day, because people used to worship the sun, so they gave it its own day. This is the sun. Can you believe the days of the week are from, you know, false gods? No, I'm not joking. They're actually from Friday. There's a false god called Frey. Yeah, you believe there's someone called Frey, right? So it's Frey's day, Friday. Thursday is a false god called Thor. Don't know if you heard of Thor. You must have heard of it in some Thor's day, Thursday. Wednesday was a false god, Odin. Wednesday. Tuesday, I don't know, I heard of Tues or Mun, or I've never heard of them, and Sat. I haven't heard of them, right? But there must have been someone, I don't know. Can we believe it? These days of the week are from false gods. This whole system is you know, based on idolatry. Can you believe it? And they're happy with it. Right, let's talk about the moon. Now, in comparison to all the other moons, now a moon is basically a rock that orbits another planet, right? So Saturn has, for example, I can't remember how much, it keeps changing, it's about 15, 20 moons Saturn has. Jupiter has the same. You know, even Mars has a couple of moons, but they're really little rocks. I don't think, Venus and Mercury don't have moons. And the Earth's moon, in comparison to the planet, is absolutely huge, because all the moons around other planets are really small in comparison. But the Earth's moon is, relatively speaking, absolutely huge, and it's the only moon, it's the only satellite the Earth has got. Right. Now, when you see the moon at night time, its light is not generated by itself; it's a reflection of the sun. All right. So different phases of the moon, the half moon, quarter moon, depends where it is relative to the sun, basically. So if the full moon is behind the class, if it's there, that means the position of the sun is behind you. Because the only way you can see the full moon is if the sun is pointing at it completely, and then it's reflecting back to us. Do you see? So when you see a full moon, you can say to anybody, do you know what? Although you can't see the sun, I can tell you where it is. They say, how? You can stand it. It's right there below the horizon. So, wow, how do you know that? I said, it's a secret. Right? So the full moon is there. The sun is right behind you. It's below the horizon. You can see the moon during the day sometimes. And when you see it during the day, just notice how dim it looks. It's actually the same brightness, but because the day is bright, it looks dim. Yeah? So you can see how it actually looks, and scientists have concluded that the amount of reflection the moon gives is the same as if you're looking at a worn pavement or a road, and that's how much light is reflected back off the moon. So in daylight it looks really grey and dull, like a dull road or a pavement. But at night time it's really bright because all that's changed is, rather than daytime, it's nighttime. You know. The other interesting thing is, as the moon goes around the Earth, it rotates around its own axis, but its rotation matches the rotation of the Earth. So the conclusion is, we see the same bit of the moon all the time. As it goes around the Earth, it goes around its own axis. So it's called a synchronous rotation. And that's an amazing coincidence. Wait, it's not a coincidence, Allah's design, isn't it? So we've seen the same face of the moon. So people wonder for a long time, what does the back face of the moon look like? And it looks very much like the other face of the moon, actually, but a little bit brighter. Where did the moon come from? Well, when they landed on the moon, they brought back a number of rocks, and those rocks have been analysed. And they found them to be very volcanic in origin. Yeah. So basalt and gabbro and stuff like that, if you know about rocks. Now those rocks are volcanic in origin, and they found out they were very, very similar to the Earth. In fact, practically the same. So they've concluded that the moon must have formed from the Earth. That's what they've concluded. I don't know about this. I mean, I'm looking into it in terms of what the Qur'an says, but I haven't found anything. I have found something, but I haven't researched it properly. But the fact is, they've said there was a very, very slow collision, and a huge amount of the Earth was taken out, and the rocks that were left, they basically made the moon. Because that's the only thing to explain the fact that the rock analysis is so similar. So the moon goes around at 10 miles per hour, and the Earth goes around at 1,000 miles per hour. That's a sort of, and it actually goes around the Earth about 2,200 miles per hour. The distance from the Earth to the moon is about 250,000 miles. So it's quite far away. Now, what does the moon do? Actually, before I go on to that, can I show you a picture on page 11? The top picture is Saturn. Now, the reason it looks a bit like that, there's a spacecraft that goes around Saturn. It's called the Cassini spacecraft. It actually went behind Saturn, and the sun was behind Saturn, if you see what I mean. So it went past Saturn, and the sun was actually behind Saturn. So that's why the photograph looks like that. And because of that, because the sun was behind Saturn, it was very dark, and they could see lots of other planets. So if you look down at the bottom picture, I've written Earth. See that white blob? That's actually the Earth as it looks from Saturn. And then if you go to the left, there's a little white spot. That's the moon that's going around the Earth. Isn't that amazing? Someone said to me, wow, it's quite far away from the Earth. Yeah, it is. It's not really close up. Trust me, it'd be big in the sky if it was close up. Right? That is absolutely amazing. And NASA was so proud of this photograph. They actually said, when they were taking it, they said, can everybody smile and look up in the sky? I don't know, they just wanted to sort of advertise it somehow. So that is amazing. I've done it in colour. I'm not sure how it has come out in colour, but actually on the screen it's a little blue dot, the Earth. Just like Mars is red, the Earth looks a little bit blue. Doesn't it show you how insignificant the Earth is? And how fragile everything is, you know. Right, just back to page 5. So what does the moon do? Well, actually the moon, one of the things the moon does, it stabilizes the Earth. Now, if you got a spinning top and you spin it, right? What is going on? If you have a spinning top and you spin it, it wobbles, doesn't it, like that? The Earth would do that, right? Now the moon actually minimizes that wobble. If that wobble existed, the changes in weather on the Earth would be a lot more than it is at the moment. So Allah stabilized the Earth's weather by putting the moon, which is massive, and stops that wobble. And by the way, that wobble, don't know if you know, every now and again we have to change the clocks, not because of leap years, but because of the wobble. Yeah, I don't think it's happened yet, but every century scientists have to add. Oh no, it has happened. For the atomic clocks, they have to add a second or 4 seconds, something like that. Every I don't know how often it is because of the wobble. Isn't that amazing? Just to sort of keep it synchronous. So the Earth actually the moon actually stabilizes the Earth enough to keep its weather stable. So the moon's performing a very important function. And the action of the sun and the moon actually cause tides on the Earth, because if the moon's up there, for example, we are being pulled towards the moon, and the Earth's here, we're being pulled towards the Earth, and the sun somewhere, we're being pulled towards the sun. But the Earth's gravity is so powerful, we can't feel that pull, right? We can't feel it. But if you're an ocean, you'd actually feel it a bit. The ocean goes up a little bit every time the moon's up there or the sun's up there. The ocean goes up a little bit, and you can't really measure it. But when you're on land, you can actually measure it. Those are called the tides. And we have 2 tides a day. So as the Earth goes round, it goes round the moon and the sun. The moon and the sun change its position, so the water gets pulled a little bit, and that's why we get the tides. And scientists have said it's because of the tides that life evolved on the Earth. Look at that. Now, whether we believe in evolution or not doesn't matter, but they've made the moon so it's such an important part of the Earth's evolution. It stabilizes the Earth and its weather, and it actually allows life to flourish. Look at that. Just like the sun's sunrise and sunset can be predicted, right? The moonrise and moonset and the phases of the moon can be predicted to the seconds. I don't know if you've seen the programs on the websites, but when's the new moon happening? It's happening on this day, at this hour, this minute, and this second. That's when the new moon happens. You can predict it to the second. But what you can't predict is when you can see the new moon, because that depends upon your location on the Earth and also on atmospheric conditions. For example, if it's cloudy, you can't see it. Right? If it's very hazy, you can't see it. So Allah still put this difficulty in seeing the new moon, but He's allowed us to predict exactly the phases of the moon. Even its position relative to the Earth, we know it within a centimetre. Allah's given us that prediction. Again, hold that thought because we're coming on to that. So the moon and the Earth and the sun are very, very stable, are very, very predictable, even though they're absolutely huge. And the sun is, it's an explosion in progress. But despite, if it's an explosion, you want to keep away from it. But we have to be reasonably close to the sun to get its warmth. So Allah has designed this system such that the sun and the moon benefit us. Now, if you're on the moon, I don't know if you know, it can get really hot because there's nothing stopping the sun, heating the moon up. And it can get to over 100 degrees. Can you believe that? So if you had water on the moon in a jar, it would just start to boil if it's in the sun. And if it's on the other side of the moon, where it's away from the sun, it will freeze. So the temperature difference is about 200 degrees. In the sun, it's 123 degrees centigrade, and on out of the sun, it can go to minus 150. So the temperature gradient is absolutely huge, but the gravity is a lot less. If you're on the moon, say you weigh I'll be polite. Say you weigh 60 kilograms, right? On the moon, you'd weigh 10 kilograms. So you can jump up, and you can jump up 6 times higher than you do on the Earth. The problem is when you've got your spacesuit on and everything on, it's so heavy, you can't really jump too high. If you're out of your spacesuit before you die, yeah, if you jump up, and the moon's got no atmosphere, there's no air. So what they did once, they took a hammer and a feather onto the moon, and they dropped them both at the same time. Now, the feather on the Earth, because of the atmosphere, would go down like that really slowly, and the hammer would just go. But they dropped them both at the same time, and they both fell together. Hit the moon. It's on YouTube somewhere, I'm sure it is. Hammer and a feather, dropped it, and it went down. It's not a trick, it actually happened. Right. So the moon and the Earth get destroyed roughly at the same time. As the sun expands, everything dies. So the Earth's got about 1 billion years of life left, although towards the end it's going to be pretty bad. So again, I've stolen a couple of things from the internet. Now this rubbish you hear about, did man ever go to the moon? Just rubbish. Man did go to the moon, okay. Just ignore these, what are they called? These theories. Yeah, thank you. Someone's very into this. These conspiracy theories. It's just a load of rubbish, right? So I've got a couple of pictures about the moon, and also what happens when it goes around the Earth. There's a picture of the far side of the moon which you never see, except via photographs. So as you see, it's roughly it's not going to look any different, isn't it? Roughly the same, but a lot lighter. And the darkness is just different material and different depths of craters and stuff. So there's the sun, as you can see. I'm looking at page 7, right? So on the Earth, the moon goes round anti-clockwise round the Earth. The sun goes round. The Earth goes round the sun anti-clockwise. Which way around do we go around the Kaaba when we do tawaf?
Anti-clockwise.
That's not a coincidence. Right? And for a full moon, as you can see, if you're looking at the full moon, the sun's behind you. If you're looking at a new moon, it's actually where the sun is setting. It's just like a rainbow. If you look at a rainbow and it's in front of you like that, the sun, where's the sun? It's actually right behind you. Try it. When you see a rainbow, I mean, not when you're driving or anything, have a look at it and you'll realise, looking at a rainbow, it means the sun is right behind you. If you're looking at the whole thing, yeah. Okay, let's look at what the Holy Qur'an, how the Holy Qur'an mentions the sun and the moon. But before I do that, I want to talk about dimensions, right? Like you've heard of different dimensions, right? We have in our world length, breadth, and depth, or height, right? Those are 3 dimensions we live in. Yeah? So I can move around that way, and up and down. Those are 3 dimensions of space. The 4th dimension is time. We can't move around in time, we're stuck. Right? It's like time's rolled up, and in a tube we have to go that way. Right? There are other dimensions which we can't perceive, just like we can't perceive time, we can't go future, we can't go backwards. And physicists have said there must be other dimensions, and they've said there are about 10. And they've actually quantified them or classified them. So they're saying dimensions 5 and 6 are about the future and the past. So if you could control dimension 4, time, right, you could actually stop it, pause it, reverse it. At 5 and 6, you can travel through time without any problem at all. Now, if you think about it, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he had the power over this. he explained about Yawm al-Qiyamah, the last day, as if he saw it, didn't he? As if he's been there already. And he's explaining about the past as if he's been there. And Allah says, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Didn't you see about the people of the elephant? Why is Allah saying, didn't you see? Why doesn't he say, didn't you know? Or haven't you been taught? He says, didn't you see it? It means he did see it. So he controls time. Because time is created from his nur. So obviously he's a master of time. So he's a master of all the dimensions. So 5 and 6 are talking about time. And the other dimensions, 7, 8 and 9, these are 7, 8 and 9 are about the other universes that exist. There are other universes that exist, but we can't see them, we can't perceive them. For example, barzakh might be another dimension. You know, when you die, we go into barzakh, that might be another dimension. It's got its own conditions, its own rules, its own life. Jannah might be another dimension. We don't know. So 7, 8 and 9 are these other dimensions. And number 10 basically is everything, all the universes together. Right? That actually agrees with what everything we understand about Islam. And these scientists have predicted this independently of religion, yet they're coming closer to the religion. Now, if the Holy Qur'an contains all information, this should be in the Holy Qur'an as well. Alright? So let's have a look. Allah says, this is Surah Mulk, alright, Surah 71. No, actually it's not Surah Mulk, sorry. It's another Surah. Surah Mulk is 64, isn't it? Okay, but is this Surah Mulk?
I think it's the second ayat or third ayat.
No, it's not Surah Mulk. There is a verse in Surah Mulk which is very similar. Yeah, الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ. That's Surah Mulk. There's another surah, but أَلَمْ تَرَوْا كَيْفَ خَلَقَ اللَّهُ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا. Don't you see how Allah has made the 7 heavens superimposed on each other? Right? Now if you take the 10 dimensions and the 3 we are in control of, take them away, you're left with 7. Isn't it? And Allah's saying we took the 7 heavens and we put them together. Right? Now, sab'a could mean numerous or several or a number. Yeah? But it's just interesting that, you know, it happens to coincide with dimensions 4 to 10, to be honest. So Allah Azza wa Jalla has said, look, we've put these 7 heavens, and people have mistranslated tibaqa. They put one on top of each other. You can translate it as that, but the word tabaqa, right, which is you know, tibaqan is from tabaqa. If you look at the meaning which I've written there, it's to cover, in other words, to hide, to make it coincident, to cause it to coincide, to superimpose it, to fold. Have you heard the phrase, space has folds in it? Dimensions are things that are folded up. Have you heard that? That's the phrase the scientists use. This dimension is folded up, it's rolled up, you can't see it. No, Allah said this 1400 years ago. To be common, to be universal, to be widespread, so these dimensions are everywhere. So look, this tabaqa, as I said, if the Quran is Allah's word and the universe is Allah's creation, there's got to be total harmony between them. And this word tabaqa, tibaqan, exactly, precisely talks about the other dimensions. So Allah said, look what we've created. And what's interesting is, don't you see it? In other words, there is a way of seeing it. There is a way of working it out. There is a way of scientifically proving it. And what's interesting is, they proved it through quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics is looking at the atoms and the structure of the atoms. From that they proved the other universes. Look at that. From small physics you prove large physics. How incredible. And what about the other verses? Allah's made وَجَعَلَ الْقَمَرَ فِيهِنَّ نُورًا وَجَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ سِرَاجًا. Allah said the moon is a nur, a light, and the sun is a lamp. Now we know a lamp generates light, but a light could generate itself or be a reflection. It's still a light, right? So Allah's correctly, obviously He has, but He's accurately described many, many years before people even knew what was going on with the moon and the sun. He said the sun is generating light, but the moon is reflecting light. He hasn't used the same words for the sun and the moon. So that slight difference for us is obvious, but at that time it wasn't obvious. People used to, think the earth is the center of the universe at the time. Allah said, no, it's not. Allah said, the sun is it's providing you energy, providing you light, and the moon is its reflection. And what about the future? The sun has a finite life. The moon has a finite life. The universe has a finite life. And the Holy Qur'an says this. And it says, specifically, the sun and the moon will finish. So, وَالشَّمْسَ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. That's Surah Yasin. The sun will carry on until it comes to its resting place, where it dies. So it's got a place where it's going to finish. And the fact that Allah says it has its own path to this resting place. So it's traveling, it's moving, it's orbiting. And in terms of the universe, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ, this actually verse talks about the earth. The earth is going to finish, but you can add universe in that as well. So in terms of the universe, that will finish as well. كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. The only thing that's left, وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. The face of your Lord will remain. Look at that, incredible. And they're even estimating, this might be wrong, right? This is just theory. They're estimating that in 1,000 billion years' time, the whole universe will be dead. The temperature will be absolute zero. There'll be no movement. There'll be nothing. I don't know. I think we might be having another cup of tea in Jannah, and someone comes along. You know what? The universe has just died. Really? Let's have a look. Oh, okay. And we'll have a look. What? Can't see anything? Yeah, because it's dead. No. Okay. So again, we might remember this, we had this lecture, on the earth. Now, in terms of the moon having its own orbit and the sun having its own orbit, again, Allah describes that. Yeah. وَسَخَّرَ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ كُلُّ يَجْرِي لِأَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ. So Allah is saying that the sun and the moon, each has its own path. They're orbiting round something, and they're rotating around their own axes. Each have their own paths. And sakhara, I don't know if you know the dua for going on a journey, Subhana alladhi sakhara lana hadha. Sakhara is a very, very powerful word here. So Allah is saying sakhara because Allah is saying, look, essentially saying we've made the moon and the sun for your service. We've done it for you. So they're there to help you. How is this big, massive ball of flame and nuclear fusion, how's it helping us? It's giving us life. How's the moon helping us? It's stabilizing the earth. How's it helping us? It's giving us time. It's giving us day and night. Allah is saying we've given them for your service. And look what Allah's done for our service, look for helping us. He's given us a huge fireball and a massive satellite, and it's saying, with this, I've stabilized the earth for you, I've given you life, I've given you warmth, I've given you light, I've given you heat. I've done that for you. But there'll come a time, even these huge objects are going to die. The earth you're on is going to die. It's running on its own, but it's going to die. Now, if I was to say to you, okay, page 10. If I was to say to you, what's the weather like tomorrow? Right? You would be able to tell me probably, isn't it? Look at your phone and have a look. Yeah, it's going to be sunny, 20% chance of rain. If I ask you what time sunrise tomorrow, yes, no problem. Here's my prayer timetable. Sunrise is at 7:27 and 32 seconds in Hinckley, but if I was in London, it'd be 7:26 and 1 second. You know, you can work it out exactly, isn't it? I'm on Mount Everest, and I put my latitude, longitude. Yep, I know sunrise and sunset. Moonrise and moonset is the same. I can predict a prayer time until 100 years in the future. It's not a problem. I can tell you when the new moon is 200 years in the future, because all the information's there. But if I ask you about the weather, what's the weather like next year? On this day in 2014? You're not going to be able to tell me. 5 days you can predict reasonably accurately weather, right? 10 days, you wouldn't put any money on that. More than that, you haven't got a chance. What's the weather like in December? All you can say is, yeah, based on last year, it's going to be cold. Yeah, thanks very much. You know, everyone knows that. But is it going to snow on Christmas Day? And if it does, who cares? All right? You can't tell me, isn't it? People bet on this. You can't tell. They won't bet on what time sunrise tomorrow. 7:20. I'll bet £100 on that. Yeah, because I've got my calculator here. Allah has not allowed us to predict the weather. He's allowed us to predict the motion of the sun and the moon. And the reason is it's in Surah Rahman. Ash-shamsu wal-qamaru bi-husban. We have made the sun and the moon with calculations, with predictability. We've done it in such a way you can use your calculations, you can work out what's going on. Look at that. So He's given us this. He's made the sun and the moon almost subservient to us for our use. He could have given us a clock. Here's a clock. Here's an atomic clock. No, He said, no, I'm going to give you a massive clock. It's called the sun, right? And another massive clock. It's called the moon. There you go. What more can I do for you? I've given you all this, and look at how amazing it is. And it's so massive, but you can predict it to the second. That's absolutely incredible, right? You can't predict. Allah hasn't said, I'm not going to tell you about the weather. You know, this. I don't know if you know, the scientists, they love to predict things, right? But now they've introduced a new philosophy, a field called chaos theory. Have you heard of chaos theory? Yeah. Chaos theory is, you can't predict something, so it's unpredictable, right? And they call it chaos theory. We say, no, it's unpredictable to you, but it's not unpredictable to Allah. It still follows laws and rules. And as a result, this scientist wrote a paper, very famous, called the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is this: if I go like that with my hands, right, because of that, there might be a cyclone, in South Africa. Because he's saying the weather is so unpredictable, it's chaotic. A small change, you don't know what's going to happen. So someone might have done that, right? And then we had, the bad winter a couple of years ago. It might have been, might have been your good self, might have done that. So we need to find someone to blame, for this. It's your fault, you did that, Or a butterfly's flapped its wings, and because of that, it's hot weather. That's what chaos theory says. You can't predict it. So Allah said, certain things you can predict, certain things you can't. But I've given you the ability to predict the sun and the moon. I've given you that ability. Right? Ash-shamsu wal-qamaru bi-husban. So, just remember about chaos theory, remember about predictability. And the only reason we can predict the earth and the moon is Allah has made it possible. Right, all that's left is, you've seen the picture of the earth from the Saturn. That's still, I can't, that's absolutely amazing. On page 12, what is that? If I give you a little bit of a clue, right, this is a picture taken from the earth, and it's taken, there's about 11, 12 frames taken. So someone clipped, waited, clicked again, waited, clicked again on the same picture, right? That big ball, what is it, do you think? That big white thing,
Venus.
Venus? Okay, there's a little spot on it. Can you see that black spot towards the left.
Sun.
It's the sunspot. Yes, that's the sun. This is the sun, right? It's taken with a special filter, so it's not too bright. So what's that thing going across the sun? That's actually the International Space Station. Isn't that amazing? It looks like, yeah, I know. That's the orbit. Someone waited about 3 years to take this picture. They had to line it up and everything and made sure the space station went across the sun where he was and there wasn't any cloud. It took about a couple of years and he finally took it and he's put it on the internet. That's amazing. So thank you for all that 3 years hard work. We can have it in a couple of minutes. Right? And those are sunspots. That's when the magnetic field of the sun is so focused, you get sunspots. That's incredible. And also he complained sometimes they moved the orbit without telling him, so he missed it. I think it just went a different direction. Right, any questions?
It's kind of related to, well, it's both related to, that about the cycle of the moon and stuff like that. So, how do we solve that issue?
So what's that?
Yeah, but, the issue about cycling of the moon and splitting it all as a result of that. Some say, look at the naked eye, obviously, let's go and calculate it, really calculate it.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually...
Yeah. You can predict when the new moon will happen, but what you can't predict is when you can see it, because that depends on meteorological conditions.
Yeah.
All you can, what people have done is, and the formula they follow in this country, they say, look, if the moon in this country is above, say, 4 or 5 degrees above the horizon, and it's over, I don't know, 10, 15 hours old, you could probably see it. So that's a formula they use.
No, but like the issue about whether to see with the naked eye or not necessarily to see the naked eye.
Well, what the ulama have done in terms of their ijma, they've said if you can see it in this country, it's definite you can see in any Muslim country. So they've used that philosophy, you have to see with the naked eye as a link. So if anybody in the Muslim world sees it, it means you can, you can actually celebrate, you can actually say the start of the new month. But they must see it
but that's
with the naked eye.
Yeah, why?
Not with an F-16 and telescope.
No, right, yeah, but why? I mean, why? Okay. I mean, we don't do that with the calculation of the solar time. So
Yeah, because you can predict the sun's position exactly. Yeah. You can predict the moon's position exactly. What you can't predict is when you're likely to see it. You can't predict
why
that.
Why some emphasis with the naked eye and not move forward?
Because you can't predict. Because you can't predict it. Okay.
But we can calculate the new moon in terms of calculation. But what you're saying is that you can't
predict when, because you can't see the new moon when it's born. You can only see it after a certain. You see.
Certain conditions are met.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if we can calculate the moon in terms of calculation, and we know by calculation it's new moon.
Okay.
Why can't we then do
it? All people have to do is create a database whereby, when you've seen it, how old is it, what height is it? If they do that, then you can get a statistical analysis done. No one's done that.
So would you say you don't necessarily have to see with the naked eye?
No, someone.
Because I know even amongst the Sunni ulama there's a split.
Okay, I would say, providing it's highly likely that you can see it with the naked eye, based on anywhere around the world, based on its elevation and its age, that's enough.
So you don't necessarily see with the naked eye?
Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the formula we follow in this country, it's always worked. Always somebody's seen it somewhere.
Yeah, around the world.
Yeah. I found out it's Farashuddin. He's a sort of authority. Yeah, he's the sort of authority that people listen to.
Okay.
So when I phoned him for Eid, I said to him, "Look, the moon isn't 18 hours old, and I said, why are we having Eid?" He goes, "The problem is it's not in the horizon. It's
above the horizon.
Yeah, it's not above the horizon. It doesn't matter how old it is. So it's got to be on the horizon in this country." And I've got a picture of the moon. It's 2 days old, and it's 5.6 degrees above the horizon. I took that picture, and I worked out where the moon was. It was 5.6 degrees above the horizon. It was really big, but you could see it. It was quite 2 days old. I've seen one 3 days old, but obviously 2 days is the earliest I've seen in this country.
What's interesting, why do we have to use the naked eye calculation? Why can't we just say, right, it's born?
Because the Prophet ﷺ said, when you see it,
Mm-hmm.
he said you must see it for the new, and if you can't see it, calculate. That's what he said.
But
right?
could you argue that that's because of that's
No,
what they
no.
used to do at the time?
No, they used to wait for it to be seen. If it was cloudy, they started the next day.
Yeah. No, that's because maybe I don't want to use the correct word, but not everybody knew how to do hisab at the time.
No, they just okay, yeah, fine. So what do you do now? We have to predict when you can see it, but you can't do that. That's what I'm saying. You can't work out when you can see it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying
If
calculate when you can see it. I'm saying calculate when it's born.
No, but then you can't see it though. When it's born, but you can't see it. No, but you can't see it. When it's born, you can't see it.
No, I know that.
Anywhere in the world, you can't see it. When it's born.
So
even from space, you couldn't see it when it's born.
We're going to define months because I think in the Qur'an that phase of the moon is for you to calculate the months or something. So phase of the moon is connected to months, and months is time. So why do I see the naked eye?
Because the Prophet said that. That's why Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He said.
Why, isn't it?
No, but he said he didn't say calculate. He said the month starts when you can see the new moon. Simple. So we have to be able to see
There's
it.
another hadith that said Rasulullah said that we are a illiterate nation. We don't keep hisab, therefore the moon could be 29 or 30 days.
No, what he said was, if you can't see it, then calculate. In other words, work to 29 days. If you can't see the moon at 29 days at sunset, then make it 30, and the month starts the next day, by default.
Mm-hmm.
So every month, he said, is 29, 30 days. So from hadith, every Islamic month must be 29 or 30 days. You can't have 28, you can't have 31. So if it's not going to be 29 days, it's going to be 30 days. And the next month starts by default. He also accepted from that hadith that we can make mistakes, because he goes, if it's cloudy, you can't see it, count to 30, start the next month after that. So it's not, he admitted it's not an exact science.
No, I understand that. It's not exact science in terms of calculating observing the moon, you're looking at it, you should be able to see it. I'm going one step behind that. I'm saying the new moon is born, despite you can see it or not. Despite it being
but it's about seeing it, that's the whole point.
Yeah, but he said when you see it. So you have to be able to see it. And you can't see it when it's just born.
Seeing me literally see it.
Seeing, literally seeing.
Well, again, that's an interpretation.
No, it's not, it's his words. It's not, you can't reinterpret his words. Oh, he meant... No, he said when you see it, That's what he said, that's what we accept.
So we take a literal meaning.
I don't think you can take allegorical meaning from seeing. It's seeing is seeing, to be honest. The ijma is seeing. That's the ijma.
Yeah, but
The minority, like a few Wahhabis in Saudi, they just work out when it's born, because it's money for them, isn't it?
Possibly.
No, definitely. My parents were in Saudi for Ramadan, and at Zuhr time, the hotel guy said, "Congratulations, Ramadan tonight." They said, "No one's seen the moon yet." No, trust me, it's going to happen tonight. And all right. They went to the mosque at Maghrib time. They said, "Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Mabruk, Ramadan starts tonight, but we're not doing Tarawih tonight. It will start tomorrow."
What?
Yeah, because the moon no one could see the moon. So officially, the prices went up, but everyone had to fast. But Tarawih is the next day. Yeah. Because the hotel goes, price is going up tonight, they're going to double. Yeah, all right, thanks very much. So it's a money moon they follow. So don't follow the Wahhabi moon, right? Follow the real moon, and it's when you can see it.
And by doing that, you would get people in some parts of the world doing it either one day and other parts of the world. That will happen. That will happen because you've got a global internet now, and global Facebook and Twitter and all that. If any person, any Muslim country actually sees it, anybody from that longitude towards the west can start the month the next day. That's the beauty of the global thing. You can actually, there's ijma on that as well.
Just a quick question. I don't know how accurate this is, but I read this somewhere that the Prophet ﷺ said that one of the negative aspects of after Hazrat Usman It's one of the these khilaf at the end would be that there'd be a massive discrepancy with regards to the moon. Is that correct?
It might be true. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen
I
that.
think what you're talking about is when Sunnah said that the best generation is on 3, and then after that there'll be false testimonies.
Yeah.
I think that's what you said.
I read it somewhere. I don't know how accurate it is. But
We can't even trust the 2 witnesses anymore. You know, people
Yeah.
say, oh, "I've seen the moon here, and my 2 mates they witnessed it with me." You know, we can't. Islamically, you have to accept it, but you know how much you know the whole world hasn't seen it, and you have. You know, it's not even above the horizon, but you've seen something. You know.
Yeah, that's fine source.
So even now, the moon is causing controversy. You know. Okay, nothing else.
No, just
Okay, thank you very much. Jazakumullah khairan da'wan. Yep.
I'm just saying, I'm just happy they did it.
yeah.
I don't think he's totally happy, but anyway. I'll show you my pictures when I'll bring him in next week, and I'll show you the pictures of them.
Yeah, because I tend to use Greenwich Observatory, their calculation, and I tend to use the moon sighting website.
Yeah. If you look at Greenwich Observatory, what you find they classify A, B, C.
ABC,
Yeah.
and the time zone.
Yeah. So they say stuff like, "There's no way you can see it."
Yeah.
Yeah. But we don't accept that.
No, we can use it as a guide, but we can't use it
Yeah,
as
exactly.
absolute rules.
So even they can't predict it. Do you see that? That's my point. You can't predict when you can see the moon.
Because weather is unpredictable.
Yeah. Okay. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.